Hi, Carl here for ProAV TV, and today I'm out of the office braving the absolute freezing cold to show you guys this. This is the Sony a7R Mark III, which on paper might look very similar to the a7S Mark II and the a7R Mark II, but there's actually some really useful improvements here, specifically for video users. So let's take a look at what's new. So in terms of image quality, it's essentially the same camera as the Mark II was. There are some improvements. Sony say that they've managed to squeeze a little bit of extra image quality, particularly with things like dynamic range, because of modern processing power that just wasn't available to them when they were building the Mark II. But essentially, you're going to get the similar images out of this as you did get out of the Mark II, particularly in terms of video. But there are some really fantastic ergonomic tweaks which make this well worth the upgrade. The first one is definitely this larger battery. Everyone keeps saying it, but it is just such an important feature for whether you're shooting stills or video. You probably get 2 or 3 times the battery life out of this than you do out of the Mark II. Those tiny little batteries that the Mark II used, you needed to have an entire bag full of them if you're going to do a whole day shoot. With these, you can just chuck a couple in your pocket and you can last the whole day. All the buttons on the back. This is a really hard thing to get across in a video like this, but they just all feel a lot more solid and reliable. Even the wheels on it just feel much nicer to use than they did on the Mark II. Plus, they finally moved the record button from being on the side to being up here at the front where your thumb can hit it really easily, that should have been there from the start. I don't know why Sony put it here on the side, but that is the best place for it because it's easy for your thumb to get to. And it's a much better button as well. So you can tell when it's been pressed, so you don't get the annoying double press issue which a lot of A7S and A7R users had, where they thought that they were rolling when they weren't. I personally missed a lot of shots that way. Plus you can record it, you can set it to any of the assignable buttons if you wanted to. So particularly the shutter button, if you never shoot stills, that's a nice one to put it on. But you can also put it on any of the ones at the back. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. We've also got dual card slots, which is such an important feature, particularly for video work, particularly for people shooting events like weddings, something like that, where you just can't go back and repeat it. You need 2 card slots for instant backup, so you're recording the same thing to both card slots. Or if you're shooting longer things, you can fill up one card and then instantly swap over to the next. You still have the internal record time limits on this camera, but you can do that so that you can have much more storage space. Ergonomically, this is a much nicer camera and more professional feeling camera to use than the Mark II was. One of the big improvements on the still side was increased autofocus performance, and you do get a little bit of that benefit in the video world as well. Particularly this joystick on the back really helps control the autofocus point. And once you put the autofocus point, like here I've got a shot with some holly and then a background, and I'm going to go between the background and the holly, and it seems really quite responsive, and there's no hunting either. Sometimes it takes a while to find it, but there doesn't seem to be any hunting like you get with some other cameras. It seems really solid autofocus. So we also get some important improvements in slow motion. You get the 100 frames a second slow motion just like on the A7S Mark II, but you now get this dedicated position on the dial on the top, which goes into S&Q mode, which will take 100 frames a second and instantly convert it into 25 frames a second for playback in camera. Or of course, just within the normal video mode, you can go into the menu, select 100p recording, and then get actual 100p files, and then of course you can convert that to 25p later on in post. The other thing that's quite nice, which I wasn't expecting, is autofocus in slow motion. Most cameras can't do this, but even in the S&Q mode one, not just in the 100p recording, you can actually get full continuous autofocus exactly the same as in normal video mode. So that's really nice to see. They've improved the brightness and the quality of both the EVF and the onboard LCD screen, but they've also improved some of the focus tools. So I'm not talking about autofocus here, I'm talking about the focus assist things. So particularly peaking, they've refined some of the peaking algorithms and made it slightly more accurate as to what it shows peaking around. Apparently they had got some criticism on the original A7s. I didn't mind it too much, but apparently they'd had some criticisms that it was way too oversensitive. On this, they've refined it, and it's much easier to pull focus and clearly see what's in focus when you're focusing manually. Okay, so this is a really small thing now, but one of my absolute favorite additions is the ability to put the APS-C crop mode onto an assignable button. So I've just assigned it here to pressing down on the wheel, and it instantly crops in to the sensor about 1.5 times, so that you can, if you've got a prime lens, or maybe you're right at the end of your lens like 70 on this one and you just need that little bit extra reach, you can just press that and go immediately into that super 35mm mode. So another nice little feature is the addition of both a micro USB and a USB-C port on, which might sound very boring techie, but if you shoot time lapse, that's really, really useful. It means that one of them can be used for a remote trigger to set off the time lapse recording as an intervalometer, and the other one can be used to provide power into the camera so that it'll last for a lot longer than the internal batteries would. That's really nice. So I guess the obvious question on everybody's lips is, if you're a Sony video shooter and you use the A7 series, should you upgrade to this, the A7R Mark III, or should you wait for the inevitable A7S Mark III, whenever that may come? And that's exactly it. We don't know when that's going to come. We have absolutely no idea what the specs on that is going to be. But this is here, and this is here right now. And I think it's going to be fairly safe to assume that the differences between the Mark III versions of the A7S and A7R is going to be fairly similar to the differences that there were between the Mark II versions of the A7S and A7R. The A7S having the lower megapixel count but the better low light, and maybe a trade-off of a couple of better video features for not as good autofocus, whereas the R3 even is a fantastic hybrid camera, so fantastic stills and very, very good video as well in one package. I know a lot of shooters of the Mark IIs who prefer the R Mark II. Even if they own both cameras, they pick up the R Mark II more often than they pick up the S Mark II, purely because the video is nearly just as good in all but the extreme low light situations, which we don't really film in that often, and it does these fantastic stills, these 14 megapixel stills, which the A7S just can't get anywhere close to. So depending on the work you do, the R Mark III might be the better camera regardless of the specs of the S Mark III. But let me know what you think of it in the comment section down below. And I think that's it for now. I'm going to head off back to the office to find somewhere warmer because it is freezing out here. But let me know what you think of it in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.